Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
Welcome to Weird Web Radio. I'm your host, Lonnie Scott, and in this episode, we're talking to Cyndi Brannen. Cyndi is a witch, a psychologist, and she's dedicated to Hekate. She lives with her two sons in the coastal region of rural Nova Scotia. She's a trained energetic healer, a psychic, an herbalist, who's also an internationally recognized expert on women's health and the development of self-help programs. In 2005, she founded the Open Circle Wellness, which offers courses and individual support, including the popular Shadow Taming workshop and tarot readings. She created The Real Work, a Pagan Path for personal development, and teaches that in person as well as online. She's also providing training for those wishing to deliver the course, so you can become certified instructors in it as well. Dr. Brannen has taught meditation and mindfulness to a variety of groups and organizations, and she's even started keeping her keys as both a blog on Patheos and a group on Facebook to fulfill her mission and dream of writing and teaching about modern Hekatean witchcraft. You can always learn more about her at keepingherkeys.com. Cyndi was a lot of fun to talk to in this episode, and I think all of you are really going to like her, especially if your interests are into Hekate. If you're looking for insights or answers to challenges in your own life, and you would like to have the help of tarot to answer those questions, go to my website, tarotheathen.com, and arrange your reading today. You can follow Weird Web Radio on Facebook at Weird Web Radio, join the official Weird Web Radio Facebook discussion group, or even follow us on our new Instagram page at Weird Web Radio. Grab a drink, grab some popcorn, sit back and relax, and enjoy this show. Stay weird, my friends. Cyndi Brannen, welcome to Weird Web Radio. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and so listeners out there don't know, but I'm sitting in the middle of winter wonderland, and you're sitting in the middle of some sort of winter storm. So just ahead of time, in case this becomes a two-part audio session, now you all know if it sounds different. Well, Cyndi, right away, I want to talk to you about the word witch. It's something that's become really prevalent and popular again in our pop culture. And I think it's fair to say you identify as a witch, correct?
I do.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it's curious that you're asking me this question at this moment because I'm just in the midst of writing a new blog article asking the question, can witches be light workers? I think this is an interesting question to pose right now, given, some of what you said, that witches and identifying as a witch has really become part of pop culture. But there's also the kind of new age movement, the light worker movement. And recently, over the past decade or so, I've been introduced as a light worker and called a light worker in different situations. And I've never identified as a light worker. I don't really know much about the new age movement. Know a little bit because I'm a naturally really curious person. And the last time I got introduced as a light worker, I just had this moment that I thought, well, there's something there worth exploring, the difference between witches and light workers, given that the rise of identifying as someone who works with natural energies has been, that's really risen in popularity. But, and alongside the thousands of people who identify as witches these days are also probably even a larger number of people who identify as a light worker. So to me, a witch, and it's funny, I've been working on this article and I'm like, well, I'm going to contradict myself in some places about earlier things I've written. But I think that's part of being a witch too. I think, part of identifying as a witch is embracing that delicious complexity that is our experience, our personal experience as a witch, that we do understand duality and that we can change our minds and that nothing is really as straightforward as sometimes we might like it to be. And I wrote an article back in the summer about, what it means to call yourself a witch. And that in that article, I just said, if you identify as a witch and you actually do energy work, like you cast spells, you do, you maybe occult herbalism or even crystal magic or candle magic, really simple forms of magic. If you're doing that and you feel like you're a witch, then you're a witch, is what I basically said. But then there's also the idea that witchcraft has a past. And I wrote another article. I think I called it, "If you call yourself a witch, then own it." And I was being maybe a little bit saucy in that article because when someone like me who's identified as a witch and really gone through like a witch's journey of having a professional career and not being able to be out of the broom closet, and really values the title of witch, and I take it as a very serious title. It's a title to me that comes with a history, and that's a history of persecution and ostracization and murder. It's a history that it's a gendered history where women were traditionally seen as witches. I'm certainly not saying anything against anyone who's a different gender or who's non-gendered who identifies as witch today, but I'm saying that witch has a history. As a word, it comes with a history. It's not about owning a sage bundle and waving it in the air a few times, or even wearing a piece of pink quartz in your bra. It's there's a history, there's a seriousness to the word witch. And I hope that as witchcraft becomes more and more popular and identifying as a witch becomes more common, that we don't lose the weight, the mantle of the title of witch.
When did you know that you were going to be a witch? When did you get your first experience at this?
This is I think my first experience was when I was very, very young. I was always, we lived in a suburban neighborhood, and I was always the child who was by herself in the woods, collecting plants and, hanging out with animals, bringing home stray animals, and wanting to be outside in the dark at night. I was also the child whose mother dropped her off at the library and who would read occult books and then sneak them home from the library because my parents were fundamentalist Pentecostals. So anything to do with the occult at all was not permitted in the house. So I think I've always been really naturally drawn to the occult and to nature. So I don't really think there was ever a time in my life I didn't feel this way. It was, I think I was about 19 and I went on a trip to Boston, and I always forget the name of the store, but I wandered into like a kind of a witchy spiritual bookstore in Boston and discovered someone you might have heard of, Scott Cunningham.
Yeah, I think many people have.
And Laura Cabot.
Yeah.
And it was like I came home. I was in that bookstore and I had a homecoming, in a bookstore in Boston. And then it was that's who I was. And that it's in my heart, that's who I am.
Yeah. Growing up in a house with that sort of, in the Western world, that's almost as extreme as religion gets with the Pentecost, in many ways. Now you're going to the library and you're grabbing occult books. It's funny too. A friend of mine is a librarian, and he says the number one books stolen are the occult and witchcraft books. And I personally think it's because people are embarrassed, to be seen with them, or scared to be seen with them. But you're going back home to a very religious household that really does shun witchcraft and the occult. So how do you keep that hidden? How do you continue to practice and study as you're growing up under the watchful eyes of your family?
I got very, very, very good at deception. And and then I also got caught quite a bit and got punished quite harshly. Looking back, it was quite harsh. But then it never deterred me. It would just, what it really made me do is it made me very skilled at being incredibly secretive about what I'm doing, which and finding ways to incorporate witchcraft and the occult that are very subversive.
Now, I mean, one of the biggest draws to witchcraft and the occult, of course, is magic. When did you become convinced that this was something real and worth pursuing?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is when I was quite young. I was just starting out, actually, and I was in my 20s, and I was in a very harmful relationship and was having a difficult time getting out of this relationship. And myself and a really close girlfriend at the time, we did a binding spell with a cord. You know, one of those really simple ones where you take the cord and you use different colors and you braid it. And we did this on the ocean, which is still where I do a lot of my witchery. And I managed to get the person out of my life, and the person went on to suffer a great deal through random, unfortunate events. And I was like, oh, maybe there's something really to this, more than just a connection to, more than just like an animistic connection to plants and rocks and animals that I'd always felt, but maybe I could actually manipulate these forces to kind of bring about my desired effect. So that was my first spell that I remember doing.
Oh, very cool. Since we've gotten into witchcraft and, sort of your history of it, you talked about having a witch's journey in a career where you couldn't come out of the broom closet. So I guess you start off in a home where you have to keep yourself hidden, and then it goes into your adult life where you still have to keep yourself somewhat hidden. Is that correct? It's
entirely correct. I worked in the public healthcare system. I also taught at a university, and I guess at the university, it doesn't really matter, but within the public healthcare system, given the role that I had in the hospital, I could not be out of the broom closet. At the same time, I would teach classes and workshops on weekends and such. I always labeled myself a spiritual teacher, but even that caused issues with my boss. And because I was, it could be what I was doing was perhaps viewed by the hospital executive as being contrary to, evidence-based medicine. I don't know if that makes sense. And because of the nature of my association with, in my role in the hospital, that I couldn't be seen as doing something that was contrary to evidence-based medicine. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So I got in a lot of trouble, basically. I mean, that's another thing my whole life is. As good as I am at keeping secrets, I'm also really good at unintentionally causing a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, I have a theory about that. I really do. I think any of us who are practicing magic or delving into witchcraft, the occult, paganism, anything where you are getting in touch with these forces that really are sort of against the status quo of society, I think we create a ripple that kind of follows us around, and it makes people notice you whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think it's true. There's something about us. And I don't regret my career, in health research and in healthcare at all, or my academic career. I just, I had this moment about 1.5 years ago, and I was driving home from the university, and I just had that moment that I was done. I just felt like the wheel turned hard. And, and there was no going back. There was no reverse lever on this particular wheel. It was like, that's it. Like the time has come for you to, I had worked really hard throughout my career to get to a place where I could kind of do what I'm doing now. That I would have the freedom to really engage in teaching about witchcraft, and a witchcraft that really emphasizes not just spell work and all those other wonderful things of witchcraft, but also personal development, and kind of like my motto is better living through witchcraft. And I just feel like I'm incredibly blessed to be doing what I do now. But, I do have I am leaving a 20 odd year career that was very different than what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Now how does personal development become such an important part of your witchcraft? What does that look like?
Well, I mentioned earlier about the witch's journey, and I kind of borrow on Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero journey and other writers who have talked about this. But that I do believe that we come into each incarnation with an assignment or set of assignments. I don't really, I don't know how this all works. I kind of lack the hubris to say how this works, but I do believe this is true. And part of our journey is to learn and to grow. And if, some people call this because like ascension, or there's different terms that can be used. But I do believe that personal development, learning to understand our shadow aspects and heal them and have a peaceful relationship with our shadow aspects. And I do believe like in growth mindset, I teach this in my courses, that's the witch's mindset. But here we have this idea that's in popular psychology, especially educational psychology, about the growth mindset is the ability that we can learn to do new things and that we're perpetually learning and transforming. So, and I think so many people come to witchcraft or the occult because they've been through a lot in their lives. And whether we could talk for hours about whether that's part of the witch's journey that, we have to go through these things in order to get to where we need to be, or if these are just really painful, traumatic experiences. People often, especially I think in the type of work I do and the way I write, they come to me when they're really hurting. They really have a lot of healing to do. So work, I incorporate a lot of techniques from the evidence-based psychological treatment and training practices I used over the years. And this really resonates with people, bringing the two together, because a lot of psychology is also energy work. It's mind work where we're using our thoughts to alter our neural networks. And to me, that's pure magic as well. Like it's the same thing that happens when we try to manipulate the energy in a candle to affect a change based on a candle spell. So I don't see the separation between personal development and witchcraft. I think that's what most of witchcraft is about, isn't it? Trying to better ourselves, find a romantic partner, make more money, get a new job. If we look at what spells are about, that's really what they're focused on most of the time.
Yeah, that's very well said. And you brought up people hurting and being in pain a couple times whenever you gave that answer. And it makes me wonder, in your own journey, what was one of your biggest mistakes?
Oh, that's a great question. Can I get back to you? I'll have to. There's a big, long list, and I'm going to have to go through the list and come up with like the top three.
Just pick one.
My biggest mistake.
Or even a couple of them, if you're willing and brave enough to share them.
I think my biggest mistake, I try not to have regrets. I have hurt people in life because I was in my own pain, because being in the broom closet and having this career, as much, it was rewarding to a certain extent, but it wasn't feeding my soul. It wasn't who I was. It was like I was acting, if that makes any sense. For 20 years, I was being someone who wasn't who I truly was. I was where I needed to be at the time, and I made the choice to be there. Sometimes I do wonder if I would have just kind of said no to that life, if I could have broken free of that life when I was younger, how life would have been. I don't know. That's not really a mistake. That's more of a contemplation, I guess. I was really kind of stupid with money when I was younger. This is like, I must be middle-aged, because now I'm going to talk about How's all you young people out there? Listen to this middle-aged mom. She says to you, don't be stupid with money. Do your money spells, your prosperity spells, and save your money. You don't need a new car or the latest phone. Because I was, with my two sons, the two relationships that my sons are from, my oldest son, that relationship was just a disaster. But I have a wonderful son, so I can't say that that whole thing was a mistake. Do you know what I mean? So I guess, yes. I don't know. Maybe I've got that like middle-age reflection. I'm kind of making peace with the past thing going on here. I don't know. Be good with money.
Yeah, be good with money. Yes. Now that's one way to look at it. So building on the idea of, you made mistakes along the way. Do you have a favorite failure? Something that set you up for success later, but maybe you didn't see it at the time.
Oh yeah, that's an easy question because all along the way where I had this career, which was, I had a decent profile. I was like kind of traveled the world and gave talks. Like one of my subject matter areas is secondary traumatic stress. So I traveled around a lot talking about that. And that was a really cool experience. But that career, I kept getting my ass kicked to the curb. Do you know what I mean? So I would achieve something, I would get like this really awesome, super competitive research grant. And I would be like hot. I forgot to ask you, can I swear?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This show is rated explicit.
Excellent. Okay. I'll stop filtering so much. So I was feeling like, I'd get something. I'd feel like I was hot shit on top of the world. And then something would happen to just kind of say, oh, yes, Cyndi, all this pretending is fantastic. However, you're not, you're doing this thing that you think you need to do, to establish kind of a secure base for your kids. But this isn't your life's work. So I have this epic story of how my career in healthcare came to literally a crashing end. I fell down a flight of stairs. This is a true story.
Oh, shit.
Fell down a flight of stairs. My son, who's 13 now, he was quite a bit younger at the time. I think he was 4 or 5. And I was holding his hand. So I was so concerned about making sure he didn't get hurt that I just let myself totally get hurt quite bad. That wasn't enough. I didn't listen. I went right back at it. I had things to do. And then I started to get really sick. My dad got really sick. I was in England for a while working. I was doing research at a couple of universities there as part of a team. We were doing some early, work on early parenting, like mothers going through a lot of traumatic stress and how that impacts their infants. Went on this epic trip. My marriage fell apart. I honestly, it was just one thing after another kept telling me that I wasn't in the right place. I wasn't in the right place. So eventually, I got the message, and here we are today.
So you think you're experiencing a series of mishaps and accidents that were leading you towards fully embracing your witchcraft and teaching it?
I think so. And I'm a very stubborn person. And, I was like, no, I'm going to have this career and do this thing because it's going to give me the security I've never had in my life. My family wasn't affluent. There's a lot of insecurity for, in a whole bunch of different areas when I was growing up. And I wanted to create this security, and all this shit just kept happening. So, and, I'm kind of a typical Gemini with way too much Scorpio in my chart. So I always see every possible explanation for any situation. So I may say to you right now that, I believe this was my destiny, that I was, I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing now, and that life kept kicking me to the curb. So I would eventually wake up. But, the other part of me is just that's just what happened to me, and this is how I interpreted it. Doesn't matter.
Fair enough.
We're still here. We're still here today.
Now, what are some of the biggest myths about witchcraft that people have in their head that might not quite be right?
Oh, I want to be really, really real and say the biggest myth about witchcraft is that it's easy. It's like, oh, spells, why you got to be so hard? Because I think, I run a really popular Facebook group called the Witches Realm. And as this has grown so quickly, more and more people who are new to witchcraft or who do a certain type of witchcraft, I've been more and more exposed to them because I've always kind of been, even though I practiced in secret, my spells would be like, I would spend so much time with the correspondences and like constructing this web and, when to do the spell and the incantation, and every part would just be so. And, I'm Hecatean. So if I was evoking Hekate for a spell, I would, really choose epithets and, put all this work. And it can take me a month to develop a spell. And then it's like, this one over here, she lights a purple candle.
Yeah, but
right?
If the purple candle gets results, it's
right.
all fair.
It's all fair. But it's like, but my witchcraft is really, really hard sometimes. And it's not and it's not to discredit. I certainly think lighting the purple candle does something. And I do think that intention is very powerful. And I started by saying witchcraft isn't easy. I'll also say that witchcraft is really complex. Sometimes we have super powerful intentions. We're in that moment. I remember one time, I was, there was a risk of harm and to one of my kids. And I just had that super witch mom moment where I was just like, no, you are not going to fuck with my kid. And exactly what needed to happen in that moment happened. So sometimes our intentions are so powerful, we don't need all this elaborate stuff. And the purple candle or no candle, just our minds can work. So witchcraft is not always easy. And what makes witchcraft work is really complex.
I recently saw, I think it was on Facebook, it would have been Catherine Heath who said it. She made a comment on somebody's post that caught my attention and stuck with me. She said something to the effect of, we don't expect enough out of our magic, that we lower our expectations too much, that we should expect more. What would you say to that?
I would 100% agree. I can't agree enough because I think, when we expect, once you expect, you create. So if you expect to get the life you want or to get, to do a prosperity spell and say, I need $5,000 for this and I need it by December 27th, for example. And if you expect your magic to do that for you, I think it can and will do that for you. But if you say, oh, I'm going to cast a spell because we're really broke and I need some money. Well, you're not putting much faith in magic, are you? I think we should have faith in it. I think we should honor magic and honor the ingredients of magic and understand that magic wants us to use it to its best ability.
Now,
does that make any sense?
Yeah. And since you brought up money as an example, this brings to mind a discussion you see a lot here and there. I've been part of the occult communities for over, I'll tell you how old I am, over 2 decades now. And it's something that always comes up when money magic is involved. So since you started it,
we're going to go there, are we?
Yeah. Why not? For a minute anyway. Let's say you do. I need $5,000 by December 27th. So I'm going to get my purple candle and everything else that I need to work the magic to get there. How do I know that when I get the $5,000 on December 27th, it's because on December 26th, I got a phone call that says, grandma died, or I get hit by a car and there's an insurance settlement, or something awful doesn't turn around to bring me that money. I know you've seen these concerns spoken by people. So how would you address them?
Well, I would just say, well, did you get the $5,000 on time?
Excellent answer.
Like, what is the point of this conversation? Problem solved. Let's move on. Like, really?
That's great.
We don't know. I think that's the delicious mystery that is magic. That we don't, we can train and, become better and better at capturing things like the elements and getting the elements or whatever, servitors, whatever spirits we work with to go out and do our bidding. And I think that's a muscle that we can build and become better and better at it over time. But there's always going to be that little mysterious part that says maybe grandma dying didn't have anything to do with witchcraft, or maybe it did. I don't know. Yeah. I wouldn't want an explanation for that. To me, magic is mysterious, and I like the fact that we can't explain everything.
Yes, it is mysterious, and I think it is difficult to nail everything down. And I think overall, in something like that, people always need to remember, if you accept a job somewhere, you took that job away from everyone else who applied for it. If you win any kind of prize, you won and no one else won it. So there's plenty of times when we do something that it affects other people, that go ahead and do what you need to do. And make sure you always hug your grandmas.
Yes. Be nice to grandma.
Yes, grandmas are treasures. I'm all out of grandmas. So please, love all over yours.
Yes, I'm all out of them too.
Now, since you brought up your Facebook group, first of all, I love your Facebook group. I think it's great what you do with it. One of my favorite things is how you always go out of your way to welcome everyone to the realm, the new members. I think that's nice that you acknowledge people who come in. It might even shake people out of being lurkers so much. But since social media is so pervasive in our culture, right? This is not something that's going away. It's something that can actually be a very useful tool. How do you handle the blow-ups of all the crazy shit, the controversy that comes along with social media?
Oh my, this is so we've talked about money. Now we're going to talk about drama on social media. I feel like you've got a checklist somewhere, and we're going to get into politics soon.
Nope.
Okay. I think for me, I have to start with a confession, is that before Keeping Her Keys launched on Patheos Pagan in October of 2017, I was not a social media person. So with that kind of that warning label, the past year, and with the really quite shockingly surprising growth of Keeping Her Keys that I never anticipated, I have made some mistakes along the way in how I handle social media drama. In particular, I ended up, this is situation. Someone who is a really traditional Hellenist and is a member in a private organization that I'm heavily involved in. He went on a campaign against me based on my version of Hekate. He was stalking me and writing blogs about me. And he actually, one of the things he said as an insult about me, I actually really took it as a compliment. He said I was a smoky eyeliner wearing, cigarette smoking cat lover. So I'm actually allergic to cats. But the rest of it, I think I really like it. It's kind of sexy. I'll take it.
Yeah, why not?
I'll take it. So I really wasn't prepared for that level of drama, because this has been a big shitstorm. He's gotten us, the Hecateans, first of all, we tend to be kind of this little corner. We're in our own tent. There's the big pagan tent, and we've got our own tent. We're kind of maybe in the same field as the big pagan tent, but we look at the big pagan tent, kind of, we're not quite sure what we think of it. But so in our little Hecatean tent, this was a big uproar, and he had to get banned from all kinds of things. It was just nuts. So that, I think, sometimes I had just had enough of it and kind of didn't ignore this person or his helpers or his fake accounts. I think they call them sock accounts. I don't know. I didn't maybe ignore that person as good as I should have. Maybe I could have ignored them harder. But then there's also the thing of, I think everybody has a right to defend themselves when they're being attacked. So that's how I handle. Yeah. And so when I started the realm, which kind of has an epic story about the whole thing how it started, I really wanted to create a space that was not going to give birth to that kind of situation. So part of welcoming people the way I do is to make them feel at home and to know that they're acknowledged and welcomed, but also that I see them and that I'm aware that they're there.
Now, what's the epic story that involves its creation?
Oh, it's a good story. It's like modern witch lore.
Well, we are patiently awaiting.
Well, I was really grumpy about Beltane. And so one of the things I'm learning how to handle is sometimes I will get really grumpy about something and I'll write a blog because I think I'm just writing a blog. This is just my opinion. Some people will read it, but it's just an opinion piece. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just my opinion. I'm not like trying to prescribe to anybody how to live their life. So I was feeling grumpy about Beltane on it. Like, admittedly, I was grumpy. And I wrote an article about me and Hekate watching the Beltane fires burn. And, and, I was having a bit of fun of it, which I've also learned is some people don't get that you can write about witchcraft and be serious, but you can also have fun while you're doing it.
Absolutely.
There are some people, and I feel bad when they miss the fact that I am poking fun at myself or just, making light of situations. And again, it's just a blog. I don't really, I'm not, it's just my opinion. I'm just talking. So I was grouchy about Beltane and managed to offend a whole bunch of people, both people who were very pro Beltane and people who are pro Hekate. I managed to piss off two groups, so it was a really good blog. It wasn't just one group. I got two out of that one. And I was like, oh, Cyndi, you should get a better attitude about Beltane and really just, like unpack the meaning of Beltane and get over the fact that you don't particularly like this emphasis on naked frolicking.
And naked frolicking is what brought the grumpiness. Yep. Okay.
So just like a middle-aged person now. And it's just me. I was grumpy. I'll admit it. I was grumpy.
It's allowed.
And so I went and did a journey and I do these things. I get these ritual baths, these like super intense ritual baths. And I just had this voice come through. I guess that I would call Hekate or some deep inner part of me that said, you need to start a Facebook group. And up until then, I was like, no, I'm not starting a Facebook group. The one thing I do not want to do is start a Facebook group. I'd been asked to do it before, asked to run Facebook groups. And I'm like, nope, it's not my thing. And I kind of had one of those downloads. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you kind of like, you have this knowing, but it's not just like a knowing. It's like, you get the whole download. Like, you know exactly what you're supposed to do, what it's supposed to look like, and how you're going to go about it. And you just like get it like in an instant. Like you get it so fast, much faster than you could normally think about it. Yeah, so I had this whole, it's really cool when that happens, right?
Because it's a Matrix moment. When Neo says, I know Kung Fu.
I don't know Kung Fu. But so then I thought, well, I guess I'll do it. So I did it, and it was like right away, it became this really magical place. And right away, I knew I was going to call it the Witch's Realm. When I had the download, I had this journey for a vision for a mystical journey to the Witch's Realm. And right away, like the most amazing people came forward, like people I didn't even know came forward. And, we run the group with what we call the Witches Council. And, the people on the council, like literally, it was like, well, they were witches that flew in on brooms. It was like they were somehow summoned to the Witch's Realm. And it's just been an absolute gift. Like I get emotional talking about the witches realm because it's so special to me. And people always say, that it's so different than anything else on Facebook. And, we have like such a commitment to education. And we just have like really amazing witches who teach fabulous content. Like we have like Deanne Quarry doing a free goddess course. And, she's like an eminent goddess expert. And then we have like Lisa Jade, who's like a super duper astrologer who runs Astro Moon Days. Like people in the realm are getting like high quality content for free. But they're also giving back so much, I think, to all of us because, through their questions and their participation. And it's just exactly what it was in the vision, is that this virtual space that is just like, we have journeyed to the witches realm, that's 2 stars past the moon. And it's where all witches of all ways can hang out and be with each other, and without kind of that drama or too many cat memes. We don't have a lot of cat memes in the realm.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's an amazing group, and I'm really blessed. I'm really blessed that I'm the founder of it, and it's just a really super cool thing.
Yeah, it is super cool. Now it's time for me to tell you how I even found you to begin with.
Okay.
And it has everything to do with that group, the Witches Realm. Hekate has been a part of my practice for many years now, but she's never been a central part of my practice. And I recently was talking to a friend, getting a tarot reading and we were going over some things, and she kept saying, Hekate wants to work with you. Hekate wants to work with you. You need to look into Hekate more. So who's going to ignore a message like that, right? So I just went looking for other sources of Hekate to see where I could deepen my own knowledge and experience with working with her. And that's how I ended up finding my way to you. There's my long story. Now, you said that some people have a problem with your Hekate. Who is Hekate to you? What does she mean to you?
I was hoping you'd ask this question because I love talking about this subject. I love talking about Hekate. I have an enduring connection with Hekate and a really deep affection for Hekate. That goes back a long, long way, at least a decade. Before that, I was a member of the Fellowship of Isis. And Hekate called me. The story is, I told the story in an article when I was folding laundry, of all things. I want a better origin story of my relationship with Hekate, but that's it. I was folding towels, sorry. And, I was in a really difficult place in my life. And it was just like this voice said, it's time. And since then, I've heard so many stories about people who have heard this still small voice, whether it's like that a tarot reader kind of reflects back that truth to you, because I think that's how tarot works. I think the tarot readers are reflecting things that you already know, but maybe aren't aware of for a bunch of reasons. Not you specifically, but all of us. And I've heard so many stories like that where Hekate comes to people, and also stories where Hekate's kind of just been on the fringes of a practice for a long time. And then something happens and she comes forward. So my Hekate is sometimes an embodied goddess, who has a human form, who's a female. And also energy currents. Because with Hekate, I think to just talk a little bit about Hekate, we need to talk a little bit about the idea of kind of like the neo-pagan in Hekate that's been kind of advanced of her as a crone. That she was like a maiden crone, like that she'd never had children, and that she really had this kind of limited role. But Hekate throughout history has had a very broad origin. Indeed, like she was also written about as the anima mundi, or the world soul, by in the Chaldean oracles, by as part of Neoplatonic philosophy. So Hekate could be a lot of things, and it really is something I think that varies by a person's individual understanding of her. Because I think primarily Hekate is a goddess that a person knows intimately first, and then the history or the standard view is second. And I think that probably applies to all deities. But I think Hekate has such a diversity of roles. If we go back to her ancient origins, like kind of the pre-Christian era, that we see she's really a goddess that can be present herself in a lot of different ways to a lot of different people, but always on the fringe, always liminal, always associated with witchcraft and magic, and always a goddess that is primarily of the dark. But she does have her lighter aspects too. But she is, she's like all of us. I think she's born of the dark. And I think she really appeals to people who feel that they are marginalized and identify as other. I think she's definitely a goddess of people she's a goddess for the rest of us, if that makes sense.
What do you mean, the rest of us?
The rest of us, those of us who maybe, well, there's everybody, I said about like, there's the big pagan tent. And there's whatever's going on in that tent. I have no idea what goes on in that tent. But then there's the rest of us who don't really fit into that, who aren't Wiccan, who maybe don't see, the gods and goddesses a certain way, or who maybe are marginalized because of different intersectionalities. Maybe we identify as queer, or maybe we don't identify as a particular gender. Or maybe we're of a non-dominant cultural group, that we're the rest of us. We're not the mainstream. I don't really know what the mainstream is. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I could be, I'm trying to say this. And right now I'm like, Cyndi, you sound like you're full of shit. So,
oh, no.
It's just like, she is the guardian of the marginalized. Anybody who identifies as not being part of mainstream whatever, whether it's mainstream paganism or mainstream culture, I think she's a goddess that can appeal to people like that. If you don't mind, if you don't mind, sorry, that's not the right way to say it. If you don't care about being in the cool kids club, Hekate is probably your goddess. If you want to be part of the cool kids club, I don't know if Hekate is your goddess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Hekate kind of runs a cool kids club. Now,
we have our own cool kids club in our own tent.
Yeah,
we're over here.
Now,
it's like
sorry.
Song.
Go ahead.
It's like that song, "I'll Be Over Here," by I think her name's Irene Carr. Like, I'll be over here drinking my own beer and doing my own thing. Hekate's over there with us.
I see. Now, how would you tell someone who wants to begin working with Hekate to begin? What should they do?
I think this is an awesome question, and I do get asked this question quite often. People will say, what's the Hekate starter kit? And, I really believe that a relationship with a deity, like Hekate, is something that's really personal. And I think we need to start with how Hekate presents herself to you. Because for some people, she does present as a crone, or as a beautiful young woman, or as a triple goddess, or, so really, I want people to think about how Hekate is being shown to them. And I want this to, anyone's like understanding of Hekate, I want it to come from a place that is deep within them. I don't want it to be like, something I hear a lot is like, oh, someone told me Hekate was this, that, or the other thing, and I didn't see her that way, so then they made me feel like I was wrong and stupid. I don't ever want to do that to people. I want it to be about, well, how do you think Hekate is? Like, really get to know how you see Hekate. Do some kind of daily practice whether it's daily chanting of her name, for example, daily candle lighting in her honor, say petitions. You can use some of the ancient petitions if you want, or write your own. Do something really simple, but start by having your own understanding of her before you start broadening that to like looking at existing contemporary writing or historical writing. Really, it's like getting to know someone. You know what I mean? I know now with social media, like we can research someone to death before we actually know them as a person. But I'm saying do the opposite. Get to know Hekate, how she is showing herself to you, and then broaden it out from there. But that daily practice, daily connecting to what I call the Hekatean chord, which is basically our own source of magic and power that's within us, that I say, comes from our inner temple. Getting to really understand our own magic that's within us, our own energy currents, and then connecting them to Hekate herself through evocation, but also through magic with plants, animals, spirit magic, and things like that. Really strengthening what I call the Hekatean chord and really exercising and developing that muscle. But first, get to know her. Second, start with a simple daily practice by chanting or candlelight, just really focusing your energy and learning to connect with Hekate as a force, and then broadening that out. It takes time to really build a meaningful connection, but a lot of people have a really kind of powerful impression from the get-go. So it's a really fascinating process to be able to be with other people as they go through this journey. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And now you are still a teacher, correct?
I am still a teacher.
Yeah, and you've got a big course that you've been promoting lately. Could you tell people about that?
I do. So the course I'm offering right now, after we've been talking about Hekate, the course I'm offering right now, True Magic, is based on my new book, True Magic, Unleashing Your Inner Witch. And this is a course I've been teaching in various forms locally for the past several years, and I taught for the first time online last year. And it's a course that has, it's completely non-deity. There's no Hekate in this course. It's about learning to work with the world of forces. It's elemental magic, plant magic, animal magic, a little bit of stone magic, and working with the three worlds, and also all of the magic that's within us. So that's the course that I'll be offering starting early in the new year.
And you also have courses on getting involved with Hekate?
I do. I offer right now. We're in the midst of the first key. This is going to be like a 3-level series. And this is a really structured year-in-a-day class where students, they have a regular coursework, and then students can do kind of a special project to be fully initiated and then also become a mentor. I'm kind of wary of calling anything a tradition, but it's a perspective, the Keeping Her Keys perspective. and so that's the other class. And that class is phenomenal. I just have such a really big, bigger than I anticipated group of students that's working really hard. And I'm super excited today because tonight we're having our inaugural public online event for the Hekatean community, because today is a very special day in the Hekatean world because it's the night of Hekate of the underworld. So we're doing a really cool event tonight on Zoom where all the students in the class will be doing various things. So I'm really looking forward to that. That
sounds really fun. I hope that goes well.
I think
now, can people get involved with that course? You said it's a year-and-a-day course. Can they get involved with that course at any point, or do they have to catch you when you are opening it up to new students?
They can't get involved in any point. The course starts November the 1st. It has a soft start about the middle of September where we start with the syllabus, but it gets into full swing November the 1st. Students can now register for the November 2019 course. I already have students registered for that. So if anyone's interested, it's on keepingherkeys.com, and they can apply now for the November 2019 class.
Awesome. Now, all guests on Weird Web Radio are required to go through the following hoop. Are you ready?
Okay.
Have you ever experienced a haunting or been in a place that's haunted?
Oh, yeah. This is like, after talking about Hekate, I love talking about ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you have a ghost story. What is it?
I have so many ghost stories.
You do.
One of my kind
favorite.
So I have a side hustle. I have a side hustle as a Ghostbuster / house cleanser that kind of started about a dozen years ago. So I have lots of cool ghost stories. Let me see. Well, where I live in Prospect Village, the whole village is super haunted. This is a fishing village that used to have about 1,500 to 2,000 people living in at the turn of the 20th century. And now, like this time of the year in the winter, when all of the summer people have gone, there might be 70 people here. So there's us and the dead.
Right.
Lots and lots of the dead. There's, it's 3 graveyards, and there's, so we had, when we first moved here, we were renting an old house, and we had a ghost named Toby, who was a 13-year-old boy who was kind of just a general disruptor. He wasn't too much trouble. So that's not a very dramatic story. I've done some really interesting house cleansings, and I don't like to get too much into the details because it's important to protect people's privacy. But I did one house cleansing a few years ago. I have a friend who I do this with, and we were doing this one house cleansing, and we went into the house all like la-di-da, yeah, we got this, we know it. Witches know what they're doing, we know, and but we just kind of were slack about how we went into the situation. I mean, we had like the kit and all the stuff that we normally use, but we were just kind of like, it was a beautiful day. We weren't entirely serious about what we were doing, and we get into this house, and this house is about 300 years old. We get into this house, and we're standing in the kitchen, and you could just feel like this super duper dense energy, like right out of this world. And we go into the living room. It's like a big old colonial style house. There's lots of rooms. We go into the living room, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And my friend who I was with went upstairs to check things out, because again, like, we've been at this for a while. So she goes upstairs to check this out, and she comes flying down the stairs, and she's like, don't go upstairs. And as she's coming down the stairs, this entity like passes through her. And I'm more of I don't see a lot of things, but I have like a real strong clairsentience, kind of like I will hear voices or know what the energy is without seeing physical apparitions. I know some people see physical apparitions. I don't really see that. But that moment, there was this black energy that came down those stairs and passed right through her. And holy Hekate, as it passed through her, she collapsed, and she just collapsed. Like, it was just, she just lost all functioning. Like, it was crazy. That house was probably the second most intense house I've ever been in. And we both had, after the entity passed through, or like, we went back to this house a few times, and her and I both had this impression of a story about what that entity was. And so we went and did some research, and we found out that we were right. There had been like a really abusive male figure that had lived in their house about the turn of the 20th century and had most likely killed this young boy. I like to go into houses blind. I don't like to know what's happened, because then it gets tricky, because it's like, okay, so I already know this thing happened here. But if I go into a house blind, or go into a building blind, and I come up from the basement and I say, in that room in the basement, I feel like there's too much death in that room. And then the owner of the building says, well, yeah, that's because it used to be used as it was a morgue, like they would store bodies down there. Another story of a haunting just, yeah, lots of hauntings. Ghosts have always been part of my life, so I don't really have any specific. I don't have any like, oh, that's the most amazing ghost story, because I could literally talk about ghosts forever. I think and that's part of like growing up. When I was a really young child, I used to see ghosts at my grandmother's house. And what had happened is someone had been murdered like on the adjacent property. It was quite far away. And that was my first run-in with ghosts, is that I would see like the residual of the murder, if that makes sense. Like one thing is I've always been really tuned into residual. So if something vivid and traumatic happens in a house, like I usually, if I walk into a house that hasn't been properly cleansed, I will know a lot of the details about, I'll pick up on that residual right away. So I had this residual where I knew, even though no one had told me about this murder. And then I would see like the murdered mother and son, and I got really scared. I wouldn't go to the shore because I was terrified. So ghosts are just part of my life. They're not.
Now, you talked about going into the place with the kit. You had the kit. You're going to do a cleansing. That's why I like to talk about this, because I have a certain degree of my audience are paranormal investigators, and I'm sure at this point now, with 2 years doing this show, they've gotten some idea of how we all do it in the occult. But everyone seems to have a slightly different approach. So what would you do to cleanse a place of that sort of energy?
A lot of times, like I said, I often do this with a friend. I do it once in a while by myself or with someone else. But my approach is go in, bring salt. I'm a big believer in salt. Usually I'll pull up to a house with like several pounds of salt in the back of my truck. I like
several pounds.
I like my salt.
I like the visual of this.
Oh yeah, like I've literally like the milk crate's coming, like go get the salt. We're not talking about a salt shaker. We're talking about, like go to Costco and get like the big crate of salt. So I like salt. Again, if you know how to work with the salt is good. I like burning things. Sage is something easy that, you can take with you. And if you have, we get a lot of local sage around here. If you've got some of the varieties of sage are really good for instant purification. A lot of times I will take different herbs. I kind of have a kit and like different things that I'll work with, like rosemary. I do a lot of wild crafting, so they can be herbs that make sense and grow where I live that might not necessarily be known to other people. Birch for binding and those kinds of things. And if the energy is really potent in the house, I actually will make do a boil on the stove and get the steam going in the house to kind of meet the spirits where they're at. What else? And different things. I did this house cleansing once where the infant daughter in the house was being attacked, like really brutally attacked. She was having all these behavioral issues and night terrors. And we actually, I'm getting goosies just talking about this story because this is a good story. We actually went and bought, and I'm not an angel person, but we went and bought this whole pile of small angels, like garlands of angels, and charged them and hung them in her room, and that solved the problem. She was able to start sleeping through the night. So I guess the basic kit would be some salt, some purified water is never bad. Like some people use Florida water. I don't use Florida water, but I'll have some kind of magically charged infused water. Candles are always good. White or black candles are pretty basic. Compass can be good if you want to see if there's that's a quick read that I use, like an old fashioned compass.
Yeah,
like the one on your
that's
phone.
Going old school there. Get back to the spiritualist techniques.
Yeah, sometimes it's sometimes I open my mouth and some type of spiritualist ancestor comes out. I live in Nova Scotia. I think I think the spiritualist movement is still alive and well in parts of Nova Scotia.
Maybe. Yeah, they're still out there.
Yeah.
They're more than people realize.
I think so, because there's a spiritualist church here. So that's the basic kit. But salt, I would say, get some purified water. something that will sense a direction, an energetic shift in the room beyond like the individual. So I use a compass for that, but there's those fancy things these days. What are those fancy things called? EVPs?
Yeah, well, EVP is for recording voice. The compass evolved into the EMF meter.
That's what it's called.
At least the purpose for which it's used. The EMF meter wasn't made for ghost hunting, but it's found its way there anyway.
And an open mind, I think, like in not walking into a situation believing that it's haunted, because like most of the time there's going to be a mundane explanation for what's going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been my general experience. That's true. Well, that's cool. Oh, Cyndi, we have come to the end of the normal broadcast, and it's been a lot of fun. Is there something that I have not covered which you would like to address?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of topics, and it's been a lot of fun too. So thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Now, once again, please tell people where they can find you.
You can find me by Googling Keeping Her Keys. I write on Patheos Pagan as Keeping Her Keys, and you can learn about my courses on keepingherkeys.com, and you can buy my books on Amazon.
Excellent. Now, I highly recommend everyone to go out and find all those things. I've found immense value out of reading Cyndi's work, and I hope all of you do the same. If you want to hear Cyndi and I get into talking more about the dead, local folklore, and some other fun stuff in morbid curiosity, come join us on patreon.com/weirdwebradio. Join the membership. I'll see you there. Everyone, thank you again for listening. As always, stay weird, my friends.
Okay, gang, that's a wrap on this episode of Weird Web Radio. Once again, thank you all for listening. Now, it's time for you to go join the official Weird Web Radio membership. Go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio and you can choose your rewards and become a member today. Enjoy all the exclusive benefits, inside information, and plenty of bonus audio with each guest. Now, you can find the show at weirdwebradio.com and weirdwebradio.libsyn.com. The show is listed on Facebook and Twitter as Weird Web Radio, and you can find me on Instagram as just Lonnie_Scott. Please remember to rate and comment and share the shows that you like, and it helps others find us in all the search results. Shoot me an email if you want to be a guest on the show, or if you know someone that would be a great guest in upcoming episodes. You can send that to weirdwebradio@gmail.com. Seek the mysteries and delights in life, my friends. As always, stay weird out there.